All right, I think we're ready to get started. So, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the launch of New York City Department of Environmental Protection's On-Site Water Reuse Grant Program. My name is Alan Cohn, and I work in DEP's Office of Integrated Water Management, led by Vlada Kniff. I am managing our on-site water reuse grant program with assistance from my colleagues, John Brock and Aaron Morey. I've been with New York City for over 7 years, and water use has always been an area of interest for me, so I'm happy to be here with you all today to launch this grant program. Before we get into the agenda, I just want to make sure everyone is aware that we will not be conducting a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Instead, we ask that you post your questions in the question box during the webinar or email your questions to the program email address after the presentation. All of the questions will be compiled and a single set of responses will be sent to all webinar participants. We will also be posting the response to webinar questions on the program website. So the focus of today's webinar is to provide a high-level overview of the on-site water reuse grant program. We're going to start by discussing the drivers behind the program, then dive straight into the details. Later in the presentation, I will provide a brief overview of the grant application steps and where you can find additional resources on the program website. For those of you not familiar with the Department of Environmental Protection, the agency is responsible for operating and maintaining a complex arrangement of dams, reservoirs, tunnels, and aqueducts that bring drinking water to over 9 million people in New York City and surrounding communities. DEP also provides the stormwater management and wastewater treatment to the city. DEP's ongoing sustainability strategy is to optimize the existing system while managing a decrease in demand. Water efficiency not only helps DEP make improvements to the existing system, but also improves our resiliency to future stresses on the system, including climate change and drought. In order to continue reducing water demand, DEP is launching the On-Site Water Reuse Grant Program, a new cost-sharing program that provides incentive for commercial, mixed-use, and multifamily residential sectors to install water reuse systems by covering a portion of the capital costs. Grants for water reuse systems are available at the individual building and district level. Individual building scale projects are eligible to receive reimbursement for costs up to $250,000 for a system designed to save at least 32,000 gallons of water per day. District scale projects involve 2 or more parcels, such as housing development, where the project reduces demand in the shared distribution system. District scale projects are eligible to receive reimbursement for costs up to $500,000 for a system designed to save at least 94,000 gallons per day. There are 6 eligibility requirements for the on-site water reuse grant program. The first is simple. You need to be a DEP customer. Second, the installation must be permanent. In accepting the terms of the grant, you're agreeing to operate it for a minimum of 10 years. Next, the grantee must also agree to comply with all applicable rules and regulations of on-site water reuse systems. If you're unfamiliar with the New York City specific regulations, I will be pointing out some resources later in the presentation. Of course, you must also submit a complete application. I'll speak more to the actual application process in a bit. The next requirement is that the grantee agrees to have the reuse system constructed and certified within 4 years of the funding agreement approval date. And lastly, over the required 10-year operation period, the grantee must provide DEP with annual status reports. If the annual reports show that the reuse system does not achieve the water savings agreed upon in the funding agreement, the grantee is required to reimburse DEP the entire amount of funding received. Moving from program requirements to the application process itself. On the right side of the slide, you can see the front page of the application, which is included in the reuse guide posted online. One major advantage of the on-site water reuse program is that you can apply at any time. However, we can't review any part of the application until we've received the complete package. There are 6 items on the application checklist, including the application form, which must be submitted to make a complete package. If your application is accepted for the grant program, you will receive an acceptance letter, grant funding agreement, and any other required paperwork. The grant funding agreement must be completed and signed by all parties before the first 50% disbursement of funds can be made. Please be aware that this process can take considerable time for legal approval. The grant funding agreement and restrictive covenant are posted on our website, and we strongly recommend you review these documents before you apply. As I mentioned earlier in the eligibility section, the grantee must complete construction and certification of the on-site water reuse system within 4 years of the grant funding agreement going into effect. When DEP receives the project completion form and the Department of Buildings System certification, the remaining 50% disbursement of funds will be made. Don't forget that even though the system is installed and the grant funds have been dispersed, the grantee still has the obligation to provide DEP with annual reports for 10 years demonstrating that the agreed-upon water savings are being achieved. Now that we've been through eligibility and the application process, I want to discuss the resources that DEP has developed to assist customers in applying for the on-site water reuse grant. First and foremost is the New York City On-Site Water Reuse Systems Grant Application Guide, shown here. In the back of the guide, you will find the On-Site Water Reuse Grant application. The material in the front of the guide has been developed to help property owners and building managers navigate New York City's regulations for the design, construction, and operation of on-site water reuse systems. The first sections of the guide serve as an introduction to on-site water reuse systems. Definitions of terms are provided along with New York City-specific information regarding water quality standards and monitoring requirements. Where applicable, the guide also provides references to the New York City Construction Code. This 3-part graphic covers the 10 steps for receiving on-site water reuse grant, which you'll find within the guide. It is particularly useful in that it groups program steps under 3 major headings: design and permitting, construction, and system certification. It denotes the lead city agency for each step, either the Department of Buildings or Department of Environmental Protection, and it describes the outcome of each step. Please note that the grant program is aligned with existing processes that the Department of Buildings uses to enforce compliance with regulations and promote worker safety and public safety. While I won't go into the details of each step, I do want to touch upon the important points. In particular, it is important to note that DEP will only be accepting designs that have been permitted and approved by the New York City Department of Buildings. During construction of the on-site water reuse system, DEP will not be directly involved, although construction reports will be required at a frequency noted in the grant funding agreement. All of the system startup and certification steps will be done under the purview of New York City Department of Buildings. Per the grant funding agreement, DEP has the ability to conduct a site visit of the system to ensure that it was constructed in accordance with agreed-upon terms. 10 steps may seem like a lot, but I'd like to point out that only 2 of the steps are specific to the grant program itself. The other steps pertain to the Department of Buildings process, so if you have constructed an on-site water reuse system in New York City, they should be familiar to you. If not, in the next section, I'll discuss additional resources that are available. To download the New York City On-Site Water Reuse Systems Grant Application Guide and other resources, please visit the On-Site Water Reuse Grant Program website. This address is provided at the top of this slide. Remember, the program tag is Reuse Grant. There's no space between reuse and grant. If you can remember that, you can easily access our website and program email. On the program website, you'll also find information on upcoming webinars, other application resources, including the non-potable water reuse calculators, which must be completed and submitted with your application, and the grant funding agreement and restrictive covenant. Once again, before applying for the grant program, we strongly recommend you review the grant funding agreement and restrictive covenant located at the bottom of our webpage. The agreement is not as long as it initially appears because there are several appendices in the back where items from your application, like budget and schedule, will be attached. If you have any questions on the agreement, please contact us via the program email. And here is that email again, reusgrant@dep.nyc.gov. Please direct any and all program questions to this address, and I or someone from our team will respond. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, please type your questions into the chat box or email them to us, and we'll distribute a compilation of responses to all webinar participants. We'll leave the chat box open for a few minutes in order to give you time to type any questions. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope our new program can support your sustainability initiatives. That concludes our webinar. Have a great day.